Jacob's heart was heavy with fear as he traveled toward home. Had his brother Esau's anger finally died down, or was he still holding a grudge against him? By that time, Esau had become a powerful leader in the land of Seir. Jacob sent messengers ahead with these instructions. Say this to my lord Esau. This is what your servant Jacob says. I've been living with Laban all these years. I hope you will receive me with kindness, my lord. Jacob couldn't bring himself to call Esau his brother. Instead, he called Esau my lord and lowered himself by calling himself Esau's servant. The messengers returned and reported, Your brother is coming to meet you. He has 400 men with him. Jacob's heart sank. He has decided to kill me. Scripture says that Jacob was in great fear and distress. He was overwhelmed by extreme terror. Some people might look at Jacob and say, Isn't God with him and protecting him? Hasn't he experienced this over and over again? Then why is he so afraid? Why can't he simply trust God? There is some truth in that, but that's not the whole story. Every human being lives within the limitations of the human body. None of us is free from physical weakness, fear, or anxiety. People of faith are no exception. When danger comes, everyone feels afraid. When death stands before us, everyone is afraid. The important question isn't whether we feel afraid. The question is this. When we are afraid, who do we turn to? Who do we depend on? A person of faith isn't someone who never feels fear. He is someone who clings to God in the midst of fear. Jacob tried every way he could to survive. He divided his family and flocks into two groups. His hope was that if Esau attacked one group, the other might escape. But deep down, Jacob knew it was only a desperate measure. Then he turned to God. The God he sought was the God of the covenant. He prayed, O God of my grandfather Abraham and God of my father Isaac. The God of Abraham and Isaac was the God who keeps his promises. Jacob reminded God of his own words. Lord, you told me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I'll be good to you. Then he cried out for mercy. Please rescue me from the hand of my brother Esau. Once again, he reminded God of his promise. You also said, I'll surely make you prosper. I'll make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which can't be counted. What Jacob was really saying was this, Lord, please keep the promise you made to me. You won't break your word, will you? He pleaded with God to save him because God had promised to be with him. Never before had Jacob clung to God's promise so desperately. What happened after Jacob prayed? Did all his fear disappear? Did peace take its place? Let's see what happened next. Jacob carefully prepared the gifts for Esau. From his own flocks, he selected hundreds of the finest animals and divided them into separate groups. Then he instructed his servants, Say to my brother Esau, this is a gift from your servant Jacob to my lord Esau. Jacob himself is coming behind us. At the time, Jacob remained by the Jabbok River. One group of the selected animals crossed the river, then another, and then another. Jacob hoped that each gift would soften Esau's heart. At last, he sent his wives, his children, and all he owned across the river. Then he remained behind, alone by the river bank. How lonely he must have been. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Suddenly, someone emerged from the darkness and lunged at Jacob. Instinctively, Jacob stepped back and grabbed the man around the waist. The moment they locked together, Jacob knew this man was incredibly strong. His body felt as solid as a rock. Jacob was no match for him. The man wrapped his arms around Jacob's waist and hooked his leg behind Jacob's, trying to bring him down. Jacob quickly twisted free and regained his footing. "Who are you?" Jacob shouted. "Why are you attacking me?" The man said nothing. He simply kept pressing forward, trying to throw Jacob to the ground. Jacob clung tightly to the man's waist, barely holding his ground. How long could he possibly withstand such overwhelming strength? Then a thought suddenly crossed Jacob's mind. What if he could help me? Gasping for breath, Jacob said, "My brother is coming to kill me. What should I do?" The man gave no answer. He only kept trying to bring Jacob down. Jacob pleaded again, "Please help me. Please save my life." Still, the man said nothing. They struggled with each other all through the night. By now, Jacob's strength was nearly gone. He could hardly stay on his feet. The eastern sky began to grow pale. Then the man's attacks became quicker and more forceful. He tried to shake Jacob off, but Jacob clung to him with all the strength he had left. "Please, have mercy on me. I have no one else to turn to. If you don't help me, I can't survive." Suddenly, the man raised his hand and struck Jacob on the hip. A sharp crack rang out, and Jacob's hip was thrown out of joint. In an instant, he became as helpless as a little child. He could no longer put weight on his leg. He couldn't even stand by himself. How could he possibly go on wrestling in that condition? Yet even then, he clung to the man, refusing to let go. At last, the man spoke. "Let me go, for day is breaking." Jacob answered, "I can't. I won't let you go unless you bless me. Please bless me. Please don't abandon me." Tears streamed from Jacob's eyes. Sweat poured down his face. Dust clung to his skin. Mixed together, they ran down his face like mud. The man released his grip on Jacob and asked, "What is your name?" "My name is Jacob." In Hebrew, the name Jacob means one who grasps. Perhaps Jacob's answer was more than a simple introduction. It was a confession. "I'm Jacob. I've spent my life grasping for what I wanted. I've relied on my own schemes." The man said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob. From now on, you shall be called Israel." And he blessed Jacob there. The Hebrew name Israel carries two meanings. It can mean he struggles with God. It can also mean God fights. Taken together, the name Israel describes a person like this. He wrestles with God, so he doesn't wrestle with the world. God fights for him, so he doesn't rely on his own strength to fight. Until then, Jacob had clung to the world. From that day on, he would cling to God. He had fought by relying on his own schemes. Now he would rely on God, for God would fight for him. In Scripture, the man said that Jacob had prevailed in his struggle with God. But was that really the case? Did Jacob defeat God? In reality, the man's words were simply a commendation of Jacob for holding on to God. The true victory in that struggle was God, for after that night, Jacob's life began to change. The sun rose. Jacob crossed the Jabbok River limping. In the distance, Esau appeared, riding at the head of hundreds of men. Clouds of dust rose behind them as they approached. Jacob could barely stand, leaning on his staff. Bruised and exhausted, he limped forward one painful step at a time. He had never been weaker. He had nothing left to rely on. Yet, he was no longer the Jacob he had been. Just the night before, he had sent all his households across the river and remained behind alone. He had been consumed with fear, pacing back and forth alone on the river bank. But now he was no longer afraid of Esau. He walked at the very front of his family. Ironically, it was only when Jacob was at his weakest that he was finally set free from fear. When he was weakest, he was strongest. What had brought about such a change in him? Let us remember, before blessing Jacob, God dislocated his hip. Jacob's hip symbolizes his lifelong habit of relying on clever schemes. As long as his hip remained strong, he kept relying on his own strength. Whenever he faced a problem, his first instinct was to rely on his own cleverness. That had been the pattern of his life. He took advantage of his brother to obtain his birthright. He used deception to steal his father's blessing. He relied on his own cleverness to increase his wealth. Even as he prepared to meet Esau, he kept looking for a human solution. But that night, he found himself in a situation where all his clever schemes were useless. In wrestling with God, Jacob let go of his old way of living, and he learned to depend on God alone. That was when he was set free from fear. But that doesn't mean he became a perfect man overnight. Even afterward, he still showed human weaknesses, but he no longer relied on his clever schemes as he once had. He no longer spent his life grasping for wealth or worldly success. Each of us has a hip that needs to be broken. It may be our wealth, our reputation, or our achievements. God strikes the very place where we place our confidence, so that we may learn to place our confidence in Him alone. When He does, the pain can be overwhelming. When we let go of the things we have depended on, it hurts. Only then do we realize just how helpless we really are. Yet, that's the very moment when our anxiety fades and God's peace fills our hearts. Are you facing a problem that you can't solve by your own strength? Has anxiety taken hold of your heart? Instead of wrestling with a problem, wrestle with God in prayer. Instead of clinging to man, cling to God. Wrestle until the night is over and dawn begins to break. Wrestle until your hip is broken. Wrestle until you let go of everything you've been clinging to. Wrestle until you learn to depend on God alone. Then God will fight for you. He will give you the peace and freedom that only He can give, just as He did for Jacob.